Welcome to the fourth episode of How We Hope, a show where two friends scour the world for reasons to be hopeful and report back. I'm Betsy.
And I'm Lena.
Episode 4 is what I'm calling our rock bottom episode. It is the kind of episode you listen to on a day when you've been doom scrolling for hours. Everything you're reading in the news is terrifying, but somehow you can't stop. It's the what the fuck is the point episode.
You know, the craziest thing about this buildup is that the listeners don't know that you don't have social media. When you're talking about doom scrolling, you are going to the New York Times website and reading the news, whereas normal people, when they talk about doom scrolling, are going on TikTok for 3 hours a day, which is what I do.
This is true. It's not just the New York Times website. It is also Cincinnati.com. Support local journalism. But yeah, I don't have the app. I don't like when companies try to make me download things. I get very suspicious. I also have the LinkedIn app, and being a journalist, scrolling on LinkedIn and reading about the job market in journalism is its own horror show. So I promise I'm in it with the rest of you, even though I don't have TikTok.
That's fair.
So, for this episode, I would make the argument that what the fuck is the point is actually a very constructive question. Because on some days, hope really does feel like it's out of reach. I took this question and my crushing existential angst to two people. The first is Lena Zurub. I am noting here that Lena, my interviewee, and Lena, the co host of this podcast, have the same first name, which is confusing. But most of the time that I or Lena, my co host, say the name Lena in this episode, we are referring to my interviewee. With that disclaimer aside, Lena Zurub is someone who's used to clinging to hope. For the past 16 years, she has lived in Southwest Ohio with her family. But Lena grew up in the occupied West Bank.
I know what it means to live under occupation because I grew up with checkpoints and with curfews and the weight of being silenced all the time. So we had both fear and, we had stubborn joy, I would say.
That joy has been tested, to say the least. As of the recording of this episode, according to the United Nations Commission of Inquiry, we are 2 years into a genocide that Israel is committing in the Gaza Strip. While the bulk of the devastation, which looks like the deaths of tens of thousands of people, the bombing of schools and hospitals, and the imposed famine is in Gaza, Lena says that the conditions in the occupied West Bank, where she goes every summer to visit her mom and her sister, are worrying as well.
The situation has always been bad. The occupation has always been there. But now with the settler attacks that has been happening, it's been horrible. This has been the reality for Palestinians, but it's been more aggressive recently, where you can't even talk back or fight or save anyone from anything that's going to happen. Because if you do, then you will probably get shot or get arrested. It's bad. It's very tense. And I don't know how long people will be able to live this way. You can't move between the cities freely. There's a radio station that gives you updates on checkpoints every half an hour. For example, this checkpoint is open, this checkpoint is closed. This is how they live. Anyone who leaves their home is at risk because you never know when IDF will raid or settlers might attack too and start burning cars or burning apartments. People live in fear all the time.
One of the reasons that I wanted to speak to Lena is because she and her husband have a 15-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. I'm not a mom myself, but I would imagine that of the many obligations that parents have, raising a child who's happy and hopeful about the future is one of them. I wanted to ask Lena how she's talking to her kids about what's happening in Palestine while also teaching them to hold on to hope.
Yeah, it feels like when you are on your own, you can process your raw emotions. But when you are talking to your kids, you probably have to find the most optimistic viewpoint possible to communicate to them. It's interesting how having kids almost forces you to have more hope because you don't want to set an example of someone who is thinking so negatively about the future.
Yeah, it's almost a more magnified version of the way I feel when I talk about my work to my friends. I don't actually want to be a bummer all the time. That is not my goal. Ultimately, we're all setting examples for each other. For parents, I would imagine this is difficult. This is what Lena told me about it. Can you talk about what it's like to have those conversations with your kids?
My son is aware, like, is fully aware of what's happening in Palestine and what's happening in Gaza. He's older and he's on social media, so he sees everything. My daughter, she knows what's happening, but she's not on social media, so she doesn't see the videos and the brutality. But I talk to them about it because they need to know what's happening in their homeland. I want them to be able to have answers when people ask them. At the same time, I don't want them to carry a weight that is heavier than them because they're still kids. But there are things that they need to know and they need to have answers for.
Did you ask Lena what her own personal relationship to hope is?
I did, and perhaps unsurprisingly, hope means a lot of different things to her, both as a Palestinian and as a mom.
It's both a wound and a lifeline. It always reminds me of what Mahmoud Darwish said, that we Palestinians suffer from a disease called hope because we never lose hope. And I think because hope to us is more like an act of refusal, refusing to give up, refusing to forget, even when we don't know when things are going to get better. And now, when I'm watching what is happening in Gaza and the West Bank, to be honest, I sometimes have those moments where I feel like I'm losing hope. It feels like sometimes like it's slipping away, I would say. But at the same time, it's the only thing that kept us going. I see hope as an act of resistance, refusing the injustice and refusing to accept the apartheid and the daily humiliation and refusing to let their daily brutality define who we are as people. This is one thing that I want to pass to my kids. That's why we go back every summer because I can't breathe unless I'm there. And I want to pass this kind of hope to them.
I asked Lena the final $1 million question, which is whether she believes that hope is rational, especially at this time for herself and other Palestinians who are watching a genocide unfold in front of their very eyes.
Maybe in our case, hope is not rational, I would say, but it is necessary. It is what makes survival meaningful, you know, having this hope, the dream of things getting better one day, and imagining that even in the darkest moment, that one day we will have that freedom. I think it's worth to not lose hope. Our relationship is complicated because I would repeat it's a wound and it's a lifeline at the same time. It is painful, but it is the thing that we can't let go. Sometimes it might be not rational. Maybe people would think sometimes that it is naive, but it is not to us. This is not going to end tomorrow or the next day, but at least I believe that we're on the right path, that people are getting educated and the narrative is changing. That would make me believe that there is more hope.
So, what Lena said about hope not necessarily being rational, but ultimately being necessary for humans struck me for a number of reasons. One of them being that it is almost word for word what you said, Lena, a few months ago when we were first conceptualizing this episode. I'm wondering if what she said still resonates with you.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I've never really thought of hope as a choice. I think it's kind of the only option we have, which isn't a super helpful statement to convince someone to become hopeful. It's like when someone's depressed and you just tell them to be happy. But I've also personally never reveled in doom the way that I know you have. I'm inclined towards being focused on action and what I can do given the cards that I've been dealt. But that's also really easy for me to say given my life compared to Lena's.
Okay, just to clear the record, I am also action oriented. I just might complain about it every step of the way.
It's almost like you say you're not a hopeful person and you love to revel in your doom, but you act in a way that's very hopeful. You do set big goals for yourself and have high ambitions about changing the world.
I do. I'm a journalist, so I have a savior complex. That is very core to my identity. It's just that the phrase revel in doom makes me sound like a Roman emperor playing the violin as his empire burned. That's not me, okay? I just want people to know that.
No, I just meant that you like to complain.
I do. And everyone who is friends with me has to hear it. So Lena had this complicated relationship with being hopeful about the future, and she described this as a pretty common experience for a lot of Palestinians. Now, as a social science major, this did make me wonder whether the act of hoping can lead to a positive outcome that actually can be measured. And if you were to say to me, Betsy, that's a really nerdy sentence to say out loud, I would respond that I'm currently wearing a t-shirt that says computer assisted reporting boot camp. My conversation with Lena prompted a follow-up question for people going through an extremely hard and even a traumatic time. I wondered if being hopeful was in their best interest. To help me answer this question, I talked to Nadia Rahman. She is getting her PhD in clinical psychology at the New School in New York City, and she specializes in treating trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder, otherwise known as PTSD. Nadia has also done research on a concept known as mental time travel.
Mental time travel? That sounds so sexy and mysterious. What is that?
Thank you for asking, Lena. It is just as sexy as it sounds.
It was really fascinating to meditate on, both as a practitioner and as a researcher, the fact that as human beings, we have the uniquely human capacity to time travel. And I don't mean in the sci-fi sense. I mean, I can project myself back into the past, and I'm also able to project myself into the future. So to think about what my future might look like, to fantasize about it. That is a uniquely human capacity, that ability to go from past to present to future. And it's also tied to a lot of the pathologies we see, as well as resilience.
Mental time travel is a term that was coined by a psychologist and cognitive neuroscientist named Endel Tolving in the 80s. Tolving is considered one of the greats in the field of cognitive psychology because of his work and his research on memory. So, the theory behind mental time travel and the way it works is that our capacity to remember our past as humans, which is known as episodic memory, and our ability to envision our future, they come from the same mechanism in our brains.
Very interestingly, we draw upon our past, upon our memories to project ourselves in the future. Maybe an analogy is we have all of these puzzle pieces, or if each of our memories is a word, we can reconfigure the words in so many different ways to make so many different books
Right.
of the future.
That makes sense. I feel like I'm always replaying conversations in the past and also anxiously thinking about if someone said this to me in the future, how I would respond. And both of those feel very human.
Yeah, they also feel like what it's like to be a woman in the 21st century. But I asked Nadia, what does mental time travel look like for someone who is, quote unquote, normally functioning without a mental illness compared to someone with PTSD? She said that someone without a mental illness doesn't struggle as hard to recall positive memories from their past. An important part of that is their ability to forget or let go of negative or painful memories.
In media, there's this idea of, oh, I wish I had a better memory. I constantly forget things. But forgetting can be quite adaptive. You look at studies of people with perfect memories or near perfect memories, and oftentimes that's accompanied by depression because they are able to remember all of the sad events, all of the traumatic things with perfect recall. What we forget is actually quite significant and adaptive in the long run. Enter something like depression or PTSD, there starts to become a filter, a negativity filter. You look at your past and tend to pull more negative memories. And you can imagine if we're drawing on our past to imagine our future, the future then is going to be more negative. We see in research time and time again a foreshortened future. So there is both the belief that you won't live that long, it's harder to see far ahead. The future tends to be more negative, but also the quality of the memories in your past. If you have something like post-traumatic stress disorder, the tendency is to focus more on negative memories. Interestingly, memories are also less specific, so less detailed, less vivid, overgeneralized. They're less time delimited than someone who has not experienced trauma like that and developed PTSD.
So, according to Nadia, people who are able to envision their future and themselves in this future lead healthier lives and have measurably better outcomes than people who struggle to do the same.
Some interesting research we have done is on this concept of future self-continuity. So, how much do you identify, commiserate, have compassion for your future self? And I'm talking about yourself in 1 year, 5 years, 30 years. What we find over and over again are folks that the Venn diagrams like this, so overlapping completely, have a lot of compassion, are very related to their future selves. These are folks that are saving more. They tend to have healthier behaviors, treat their bodies better, tend to be a lot happier.
This reminds me of those influencers who are always talking about manifesting your future. I naturally find those influencers a little woo-woo and annoying, but it turns out there's some evidence that manifesting your future can actually improve your life in the future.
It's very annoying, and they're absolutely right. Keep manifesting and keep vision boarding. It will help you. While there are a lot of things about my conversation with Nadia that inspired me, one thing that stuck out in particular was her own research on PTSD, which explores how mental time travel can be used as a mechanism of treatment for people with PTSD that is often treatment resistant.
A lot of our research in PTSD and mental time travel, we looked at a particular construct called self-efficacy, which is your belief in your own capability, your belief in your capacity to do something successfully. I will say that self-efficacy, developing that sense of I am capable, I am able to do something, is a through line in a lot of therapies, something we try to build in children, something we work on in something like dialectical behavioral therapy.
What is a time in your life that you built self-efficacy?
I've been in my gym bro era. I've been trying to get swole. Something that you're supposed to do if you're trying to weightlift is track your lifts if you want to improve. Sometimes I will put some weight on the barbell and I'll be scared. I'll be like, I don't know if I can lift this much. But then I'll look through my week's journal and I'll see that I lifted that amount last week. And having that reminder that I've done it before just gives me the confidence to lift that much today, plus some more.
Yeah. So self-efficacy is exactly that. It is the feeling that you can do something that is difficult, that you might have had doubts about in the past. A study that Nadia is doing that is ongoing is on this concept called self-efficacy. You could just think of it as confidence on patients with PTSD. And this study showed that using positive memories from your past, where you had accomplished something difficult, really makes a meaningful difference when it comes to regulating your brain's fear response when you're confronted by something that feels scary. The study involves 2 groups of patients with PTSD. One group, the control group, was asked to recall any memory before being given a mild electric shock, along with being shown a specific color. The other group, the test group, was asked to recall a more specific memory one where they had showed self-efficacy before being given the same electric shock and shown the color purple. When the two groups were shown the color purple later on, which their brains had come to associate with the electric shock, one group had a noticeably milder fear response.
What we saw in the group that just told any memory, whatever came to mind, their fear response was on overdrive, as it tends to be in PTSD. With the group that we did a self-efficacy prime, so meaning we asked them to recall a memory of mastery, a time in their lives that they were able to overcome something successfully and felt proud of it. They had much less of a fear response in the fMRI scanner than the people that were just recalling a memory. People holding on to positive memories, memories of strength. It's not just a kind of hokey woo-woo thing that we do. It actually allows you to handle something like fear more successfully. It allows you to take chances.
I really like the takeaway from this study because it's not just telling you to be confident. What evidence do you have to support that confidence? It's like evidence-based confidence in your own life.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone has overcome something that is difficult, that is so fundamental to the human experience. Remember what you're good at and what you have been good at, and it should give you some confidence, maybe a boost when you're tackling something that is scary. So I ended up asking Nadia the same question I asked Lena. You can probably guess her response to my question about whether hope is rational for people with significant traumatic experiences, diagnosed psychiatric conditions, and anyone else.
I think hope is not only rational, I think you can map it onto something like the research we were talking about earlier. If you believe that you can do something, you are more likely to do it and therefore more likely to succeed. We see that in so many different contexts. That particular notion has been validated and is a robust finding in psychology. I would say our success as a species, our ability to change and be successful is constrained by that hope, whether or not we have it. And if we don't, I really think we're dead on arrival. We won't try. It's easy to lose the thread when we're looking at a live stream of a genocide that we can see on our phones every day, when we're looking at mass murder and it is live and in color in front of us on a daily basis. It is overwhelming for anyone in a world in which so much is out of our control. It's easy to become hopeless, to become depressed. It's easy to develop post-traumatic symptoms. It is so vital that we don't lose the thread of hope, of resilience, of community, the idea that we can collectively work together.
So we covered a lot of ground in this episode. Thanks for bearing with us as we talked about surviving genocide and occupation, and also learned some new concepts in psychology and memory research. Here's my best shot at a summary. First off, if you have a complicated relationship with hope, or you find it really difficult or painful, that is normal. For Palestinians like Lena Zurub, hope represents a wish and a desire to return to their homeland and for their families to be safe. But that doesn't mean it's not painful to hope, because sometimes that future that they're imagining can feel really far away. As we heard from Nadia Rahman, hope isn't just a survival mechanism. Research shows that the ability to hope is actually something that can help you thrive. The ability to imagine a better future for yourself is crucial, and it's often linked to holding on to positive memories from your past.
This whole episode has been a really lovely argument for having hope, and not in the way where we want to search for reasons that life isn't as bad as things feel. Maybe life is that bad, but in a more self-serving way. We're seeing that having hope will actually make it more likely that in the future you will have something to hope for.
Yeah, having hope is not a philanthropic endeavor. Not only do people who imagine their future selves do a better job of taking care of themselves in the present, but also believing that you can overcome something because you've done it in the past is likely to help you succeed.
I'm actually glad you're the one who did this episode because I am curious if it changes your feelings about being negative or being pessimistic about the future.
Can you stop being such a bummer now that you see that the research supports being a more positive person?
Well, when we were talking about this podcast initially, I was talking about reasons why I didn't feel so much doom, and none of them really resonated with you. But this isn't like, it's not trying to give you reasons to have hope other than actually would serve you to have hope.
Yeah, it's true. It's kind of what I was looking for when we set out on this journey, I have to say. There's certainty in all of this memory research and, the ability to imagine your future actually translating to better outcomes for your health.
Betsy, do you have any last thoughts you want to share?
I do. I will say that I am very humbled by people who manage to hold on to hope in some really dark circumstances. I think I have a lot to learn from them. As a parting thought for the children of Gaza, I would say that I am hoping and praying for and imagining a better tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to this episode of How We Hope, a show distributed by Grab Bag Collab. Did our show make you feel more hopeful, reassured, or at the very least, fend off a crushing sense of doom? We would love to hear your thoughts in our inbox, howwehopepodcast@gmail.com.
Good.
Yeah.